I just have a question to ask you, and trying to read your mind all the time.
Oh boy, that's scary.
Well, it's interesting. It seems to me that is it in your mind that you schedule so tough, and I believe that your schedule this year is beyond tough, that the midweek game is almost like a double penalty because of the conditioning factor. And you've seen some teams schedule midweek games not and maybe win that game, but lose on Saturday because of the rest factor. Uh, does that come into your mind?
Yeah, I think we're all creatures of habit. The midweek game is always a tough one, right? You go from, most of your scrimmages and games you're playing throughout your college career are all Saturday. And then all of a sudden, you just throw in a Tuesday or Wednesday game, and it's just different for the kids. It just is. It's it's a different vibe. Obviously, a lot of times if you're home, you're going to class. You don't have as much time to prepare. If it was a tough game on Saturday or Friday, whatever it may be, it's a quick turnaround. I think there's also just the big picture of, midweek, if you are traveling, and again, we're pretty lucky that we could probably do some local games. But there's the missed class factor. Even if you play at 7:00 at night, let's say you played in Baltimore, kids are getting done at 9, 10, getting back in. You're definitely impacting your kind of just your kind of routine and such. So there's no easy answer to it. If you do that, it does mirror a little bit more of what like your conference tournament would be like, or the Final Four. So there is some merit to that. But I think for us, knowing that and scheduling, most of scheduling doesn't happen, like in the fall for the spring. A lot of it you're doing a couple years out, and usually you're agreeing to like a home and home or a 4-year series, things like that. So you just don't know. Like Princeton is a prime example. When we decided that, hey, we're gonna play them in 22 and 23. When I spoke to Matt, that was probably 4 years ago. I think it was pre-COVID. We had played them, in I think 2015, 16, I believe. And at that time, like we didn't know that, so many of their seniors would take a semester off or step away for a year and then come back. So you just didn't know that would happen. So you walked into a situation where they had a lot of guys stay for that extra year. So it's been hard to map out with COVID and the extra years, how good will these teams be? Will they be depleted? Will kids come back and such and such? But it is really hard, Bruce, when you have a tough game on Saturday, then you have another tough game on Saturday. Like, where does that midweek go? Because we do feel like the preparation is really helpful for our guys. I think they've done a really good job the last 2 weeks with their preparation. I've been really lucky to have great coaches here that game plan well. They identify the other team, maybe what some of their tendencies are, the personnel, the schemes, really well. So it is a lot more, I think it's a lot more helpful to have Monday to Friday than it is just maybe 1 day or 2 days. So that's the slippery slope. It's obviously nicer to play more games, but you're limited on how many you can play anyway. So I'm not sure we have the perfect formula, but we've kind of gone off of what seems to have worked, but we're never, not willing to kind of say, hey, maybe we need to change it. Maybe we should do more midweeks. And maybe we got to reassess the schedule. Normally, if you ever look for us, I mean, just, general stuff. If we play a team home and away, normally it's like, okay, you have to have that conversation of, do you want to re-up it again? Do you want to do it again? And normally you do, but sometimes, you're trying to get somebody added on. Like a couple years ago, it was getting Syracuse added on. We thought that would be great for the fans. It'd be good for the program. So we're always listening to see if maybe there's something that makes the schedule better.
Stick with the plan.
It's a tough schedule, but I do think it forces us to prepare and work hard, and the kids are very motivated all week because I think they know every week they're going to be challenged, so that they don't take practices off, right? They don't look and go, well, this team's not as good, so we're not going to practice as hard. So you miss an opportunity to improve, and you have to challenge yourself. But that's part of the be the best mentality, right?
Correct.
You can go to Brandon next.
Hey, Coach, this is kind of building off that. You've played Notre Dame each of the last 7 seasons. It's been scheduled 6. The 7th was in the tournament in 21. What's behind your reasoning to play them every year, and does it make it any easier game planning?
I think anytime you play a team, there's you get a sense of their identity. I think it would be the same for people playing us. There are certain things that we will tweak year to year, much like Notre Dame does. But there are a lot of times, like what's nice about the college game is, and it's not exactly this way, but you turn over a quarter of your roster, but you return typically 75% of your team. So coaches, we tend to, look at, kind of take inventory after the year and kind of ask ourselves and ask our staff, hey, should we change anything? Would we be better off doing X, Y, or Z? But a lot of times, teams are, they kind of have an identity, and I don't think that's too different from professional sports either. So, like staring down the Kavanaugh brothers, like you kind of know, okay, they're like, you kind of know what you're getting. They're outstanding players. It doesn't make it easier, but you kind of know, okay, these guys are really good. We have to make sure there's a focus there, so you are preparing. It's not like having a brand new guy that you haven't really seen, and you're kind of wondering what do they like to do? What are maybe their strengths? So, you kind of know. Unfortunately, they're really, really good. So I just know with Notre Dame, they've always played great defense. They've always had talented players. Coach Corrigan has been doing it a long time. They have been a model of consistency. So you kind of know you're going to get challenged. You're going to get, pushed. And we've had some great games with them, whether it's, been here, there, or even in California. So I think for us, it's been a great game. We've learned a lot about ourselves. Even when we've lost, we've kind of identified areas where we need to improve. Again, I think teams like that help you for, the end of the year. You're getting ready for your league. You'll practice against your own team, but then you all of a sudden play them, and you kind of, you get a sense of why are they attacking this way, or have they exposed some flaws? And if they have, then we got to get back to work and try to improve upon those things. So that's something that we've really always bought into. Doesn't help necessarily your sleep during the week, knowing that you're playing a really good team. But I do think it's, what your kids get excited about. I think people around here really appreciate good teams, and Notre Dame's certainly one of them.
A quick follow-up to that. You mentioned Coach Corrigan briefly. Have you gone any sort of close relationship with him through all these matchups with Notre Dame recently?
He's just a guy. I haven't been doing this for a while now. And then, you get to know a lot of people. You see them at different recruiting events. And, you'll see them through the course of the year. You have clinics, conventions, things like that. And certainly a guy that I've looked up to, a guy that I respect a lot. You just look at the way that program has kind of been consistently very successful. And the fact that, like the way those kids, on and off the field, the way he mentors those guys, what they do after they graduate, the success they've had in the classroom. To me, that's a program that, every aspect, I think Coach Corrigan's done a great job. And you see a lot of those guys not only get great jobs in whatever they want to pursue after they graduate, but also, they've done a good job in the professional ranks in the PLL. So, you kind of look and they're kind of checking all the boxes. And even with their staff is a very, very good staff. Ryan Wellner, who works on the defensive side, was a very successful coach at Navy. And Chris Wojcik, who works on the offensive end, is a guy that was the head coach at Harvard. So you got 3 experienced guys. And then Ryder Guernsey's been a guy who's still playing at a high level, who's a young guy that is very talented. So those players are getting really well coached, and they're getting a group with really distinct backgrounds, but a lot to offer. And you could tell they're very well coached. You saw that last week. I mean, we have a lot of respect for Georgetown, and man, they jumped out to a big lead and they looked like, they were in midseason form, and to be able to do that on the road against, a preseason top 5 team just tells you everything you need to know about how good this team is.
Go to Tony next.
Hey, good morning, John. I want to ask about your the development of your short stick defensive midfield group. The last couple of games, especially, they've been playing so well, and you can tell how connected they are. So if you could talk about some of the development of those players, and kind of a side question, your offensive coordinator also happens to be one of the best short stick defensive midfielders in the world. Has Jake helped out with their development at all?
Yeah, I'll work backwards. I think, Jake's done a great job professionally. I think even when Jake was here, he was your classic 2-way guy. He played defense, he played offense, he played man up, he played wings. And there were times when, if they put somebody out at the faceoff X to pressure our faceoff guy, we would throw Jake out there because he's so athletic. He could win the ball and he can handle pressure. We did that against Duke one year. So Jake, really is a kind of a Swiss Army knife in terms of, having a background just about every spot on the field except maybe goalie. So he's been great because I think the guys see him play. He and Jesse, they share rides together back and forth. They both live in Annapolis. So there's a lot of, communicating just because they're brothers, and they're also, co-assistant coaches, but they're talking every day for 40 plus minutes each way. So I think there's a lot, that they kind of share with each other. So that's been really cool. And I think, Jesse deserves a lot of credit for the defensive stuff that we do. Just having been with him, for 5 years now, I always knew he was a great player and he was a really good assistant. Both those guys were with us in 2014 in the spring. After they graduated, they rejoined us, and they did a really good job in a younger role, but they've really blossomed and grown in those last 8-9 years to evolve into just elite coaches. And Jesse's done just such a good job in a micro sense of, each one of those guys individually trying to get better, whether it's, basic fundamentals and technique, but also in terms of schematics, what we're trying to do on a larger sense, because there is a lot of positioning off ball. There are defending picks, and you have to communicate there. And then if you do get beat on a dodge or pick, there's slides and recoveries and covering off ball. So there's a lot that goes into it. And our guys are still a work in progress. I think that's probably the best way to describe this group. I'm very proud of how they responded the last 2 weeks. I mean, we have so many guys in new roles, and they've really improved. And we have our moments of, they look like seasoned veterans. And then they have, just like anytime when you have young guys out there, there's still some learning and growing. And the important thing for us has just been, continue to kind of reward effort and, try to point out times where, hey, you were here, but you want to be here, and just keep teaching them, keep holding the high standards. But also realize there's been a lot of growth so far. And the fun part for this group is I think there's just so much more growth that all these guys can have. When you think of those short sticks, a lot of those guys weren't playing last year. You think about the attack, a lot of those guys weren't playing last year. So there's so many guys in new roles. So yeah, I'm proud of them. Even Brian last week, was like, here you go. And the fact that they've stepped in, and it hasn't been perfect, but you're seeing them step up and give us great effort. And again, just when the moment is they're called upon, they've been ready. And when they've made mistakes, they've kind of learned, kind of made a mental note and tried to get better. So we'll get challenged this week. They are Notre Dame can put out, 2 groups of midfielders that are athletic, skilled, get to the goal. Obviously their attack is really slick and skilled. So, you have to be careful. If you overslide, they'll carve you up. If you don't slide and support, they'll carve you up. So we've got to be on point, and it's hard to mimic in practice how fast and how athletic they are. So we're doing our best. Our scout teams have done a really good job this year. So we just got to keep kind of moving and again, trying to find any type of progress each week, and then get to know them as well as possible. So we've had a couple good days so far. We need a couple more days to kind of clean things up and see how we do. But this is going to be our toughest test so far. And again, that's why we play them. They're really, really good.
Go to Colin.
Hey, Coach. So after Saturday's game, you kind of mentioned how Teddy and Brian were both in the running to start this week. Are you leaning a certain direction?
I probably would tell you, Brian's done nothing to change. He did such a good job. And unless something happens that, in the next 2 days here, be hard to really go away from Brian at this point. And that's just being honest with you, right? I try to not tip my hand on certain things, but also be honest with you all. Like, you kind of look at the body of work, and we always tell guys, you got to earn it each week. But Brian hasn't done anything the last, 3 days to kind of make us go, hey, we need to get away from him. But I'm really pleased with how Teddy handled things Saturday. Couldn't have been a better teammate. If you ask Brian during the timeouts and the huddles, Teddy was super supportive. It's never easy to be an older guy and feel like you played, you won a game, and then all of a sudden there's somebody else in a spot that you were. I just kudos to Teddy. To me, he just showed what a great young man he is, but also a good teammate. And he's done a good job the last few days of kind of going, you know what, I'm going to keep working here. So again, feel comfortable with both, but again, I think we're pretty excited about what Brian did, and be hard to move away from him at this point.
Thanks, Coach.
Judith.
Yeah, I kind of have maybe 2 slightly unrelated questions, but I guess kind of going back to the goalie thing, how's the team been able to kind of like switch kind of back and forth between working with one person versus the other, because you've had 3 in like 4 games. Yeah,
it's crazy, right? I mean, basically the last 3 weeks we've had 3 different goalies. I'm not sure we've done that here in a while. So I think part of, obviously, Logan, you don't see a lot of like just long-term big injuries to goalies in lacrosse. At least I haven't seen a lot of them, and I don't remember a lot. Certainly, there are times where they come out of the goal and they get dinged up, or they can get hit with shots, or they can get concussed. But I haven't seen it a lot. So, you're kind of like, you always want to be prepared. And I think that there's been a lot of value to having Teddy here, just knowing that, Logan's had a good couple years here, but you just never know. And I thought, having Teddy here is definitely, I think added to our team. And I think being an older guy, a lot of our older guys, there was just a lot more familiarity with what Teddy could do. And then just him being with our first team defense for most of the fall and the spring, I think they just knew Teddy better. And Brian was candidly down at the other end, because we were looking at redshirting him. So I think guys like Brett and Ajax just hadn't played. They had played with him, but they hadn't played as much with him. So I think there was a little bit more comfortability with Teddy, and we kind of went in that direction. And week 1, and we won the game. And so I also thought that it was like, hey, is there a way to be better? Would Brian be better in that spot? He certainly in practice, and even in the fall, if you go back to our fall scrimmages, I thought he played very well. We just said, listen, is the moment too big? Is Brian ready? Because what he's done so far, when we look at the practice film and the outside games, those scrimmages, he's done a good job. I just think for those guys, they hadn't maybe experienced it firsthand. And I do think, now playing with him more, I think being in that moment on Saturday, I think having worked with those goalies more, I think those guys are starting to see that obviously both Teddy and Brian give us a really good chance to win. But now being with Brian more, I think there's a little bit more comfortability on, just his personality. He's a rather quiet and reserved guy by nature. He's got a quiet confidence about him, very much like Logan. And I do think like there's a lot of trust that they have in him. Just knowing that, hey, he got thrown to the wolves, and not only did he make the saves, but his body language, much like a quarterback, he just didn't flinch. He kind of looked comfortable. He looked steady. When goals went in, he reacted very well. He brought energy. He was diving to back up shots. So I think the guys, anytime you can see it firsthand, I think there's more trust and there's more comfort there. And not that there wasn't before, but I think when you do it, I think everybody is like, wow, he can really do it in a game situation. So if Brian went down, we'd have no problem with Teddy. After that, we have Scotty Pfeiffer, and after that, we don't have anybody. So hopefully we get Wes back soon, but hopefully we don't get to that point.
I guess my other question was about, I guess maybe you were saying Notre Dame was going to be like a challenging thing. So what does it mean to kind of play them at home, where I know other teams have been, I don't know about lacrosse, if you're better kind of more at home than away.
Oh, yeah.
Like you could find
Yeah.
yourself
Yeah.
one so much. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's playing out at Notre Dame is tough. I think being on the road anywhere is not easy. I think we saw that at Loyola. If we could, we'd play every game at Maryland Stadium. We're very comfortable here. We practice here a good amount, but we love our fans. They travel very well, but I know at home, having them here means a lot to us, getting that support. And when it's on your campus, you're in your locker room, you have that game day routine, which is pretty consistent. So, playing here, again, if we could, we'd play every game here. I think for us, getting back home is pretty special. And, when you only really have 6 regular season games, you got to make sure you enjoy that and you appreciate it. And really this is game number 3 for us. So you only have 3 regular season games left here. So you got to make sure that you remind the guys to appreciate that, because especially these older guys, each week is one less, game they have left in their career. And we want to make sure they enjoy this ride, and it'll be over before we know it. And as you all know, the older you get, the more you realize how quickly, maybe the days are long, but the weeks are short and the months are short. So, we got to make sure that we work hard, but also enjoy this journey. Part of the journey is failing and making mistakes and maybe having a bad practice. But part of the journey is you bounce back the next day and have a really good practice and a renewed sense of confidence. And you learn resiliency and toughness. And you see the importance of just kind of coming back and working hard every day and trying to get better, which I think the last couple of weeks we've done a better job. And I think, Notre Dame will really show us where are we, how far have we come? How much farther do we have to get? Because they're going to test us in every phase, which again, that's why we play them.
All right, we can go to Brandon for the last one.
Coach, Notre Dame has the 2nd highest scoring offense in the country. How do you keep what the performance was like against Princeton, against Notre Dame, knowing they've got so many talented players on offense?
Yeah, it's every phase, right? You gotta understand personnel, which they have great personnel, across the board. And I think they've done a great job. They've added, not only did they have, I think their top 3 scorers are back, but they've added some great pieces. Brian Tevlin and Chris Fake from Yale were arguably 2 of their best players and have been really good players for Yale for 4 years. You add the experience that those guys have. Colin from Holy Cross was one of the best defensemen in the country, also one of the best in the Patriot League. So, among others, they've added some nice pieces to a really good returning team. So when it comes to the offensive efficiency for them, which I think they're either number 1 or 2, and I think offensive efficiency and goals scored, to your point, you got to know personnel, you got to know schemes. You got to really make sure you communicate well, support when you need to support. Make sure that you're all on the same page and communicate well. I think some other things that they do a good job, they clear the ball well, they get out and transition well. They make the extra pass. They're very smart shooters. And they're excellent riders. I think that's something that anybody you talk to over the last couple of years, the Kavanaughs themselves and everybody else for that matter, but the Kavanaughs ride so well. They really hustle and they get second chance opportunities. And normally if you have the ball or it's a rebound and you can get an opportunity and your defense isn't set, you're always nervous about those things. So we're doing a lot in practice to try to be able to clear the ball the first time. We're doing a lot on ground balls, especially in our own end, rebounds, second chance opportunities, to try to limit them, much like defensive rebounding. If you're playing basketball and they get one shot and you can get that rebound and get the ball to the other end, you're not giving them that second chance off the rim. And all of a sudden now you're playing defense again and they're wearing you down. So I think all those things contribute to it. Obviously, if we can ride and get some second chance opportunities, we can face off well. Offensively, we can be more efficient. I think that's an area where we need to get better. Just some of our stick work, our efficiency, a level of execution. We've had a lot of transition opportunities we have not cashed in. So those are things that we've worked on this week. I think we're getting really good effort. I think our guys really care. But we, have to kind of clean up some things. And, at times we look our age on offense. And if you look, there are a lot of new parts out there. But regardless of age, if you're wearing Maryland on your jersey and you're playing in the game, we're going to expect you to play well. And if you're out there, we put you out there because we have confidence in you. So we've got to hope those guys continue to kind of learn, and hopefully the game slows down for some of those guys. But we have one of the best goalies in the country coming in. And if we don't make the most of our opportunities, and shoot well and shoot smart, it's going to be tough because they don't give up a lot of goals, and a lot of good opportunities in terms of shots. And if you watch that Georgetown game, when they did get some shots, I thought their goalie, Liam's one of the best guys out there. It seems like he's been there forever. He really has made them pay. So that's a point of emphasis is making sure we do a good job on the other end and not give them transition.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Good
Coach.
luck, Coach. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.